Exactly 6:30, and we'll call the meeting to order. We have David, before I introduce you, just for your information, we have two members of the Select Board, Patrick White and Roxanne McCaffrey. And from the Finance Committee, we have, in addition to myself, Jim Belfance, Pam Boudreau, Diane Rouse, Steve Schatz, and I have not heard from Neil Holden as yet. And one of our other members, Bill Vogt, is traveling. And from town management, we have Michael Canales, the town administrator, town accountant, Ray Ellsworth, and Erica Olson, the treasurer. I do not believe has joined us as of yet. Okay, so that's the cast of characters that we have right now. And I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce David Irwin, who is the audit director responsible for our account of Adelson and Company. We've worked with David for many years. He's a CPA, and we appreciate, David, you're taking time from your dinner hour to join us. And I also want to make just one other comment that as respects the questions, we will take questions as we go along from all the participants, the Select Board, Town Management, and Finance Committee, and make sure you're unmuted, and all others will take after each section. Typically, the sections will be the management letter, the audit itself, and the findings. So if I didn't miss anything, I'd like to turn it over to you, David, and have you get started.
Okay. All right. Well, we finished up your audit for the town for the year end June 30, 2020. Okay. And I'll go through the statements. There's a lot of pages to the financial statements, so I'm not going to cover all the pages. So I'll just kind of let you know the status of how the audit went and maybe talk to you about a little bit of the some of the larger items that are on your balance sheet. But I'm assuming everybody can see the screen. So you're looking at what I'm looking at, the draft financial statements here. So these are your financial statements here. You see it goes for 41 pages. It's actually more than 41 pages because we got to count the 5 or 6 pages for the management discussion and analysis, okay? This here is the independent auditor's report. This comes out of our office. This is a result of our work that we do. It's our opinion over your financial statements, okay? It just points out that we audited your 2020 year. Second paragraph points out that management of the town is to make sure that your financial statements are in accordance with accounting principles and that everything is properly recorded and reported, which they are. And then the third and fourth paragraph point out our responsibility. We're to comply with auditing standards that govern our industry. And because we're a municipality, we have to comply with government auditing standards, okay? And at the very bottom, this is our opinion. So we issued what's called an unmodified opinion, meaning we didn't have to make any modifications to how the numbers or the note disclosures are presented inside your financial statements. Everything was in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, and your balance sheet and all the other reporting activity is accurately reported as of June 30, 2020. So we have a clean opinion over the audit with the numbers and the notes to the financial statements. So that's a good thing. Town does a good job of maintaining the financial reporting coming out of the accounting department. So very good. There's other information that's included inside the body of your financial statement that we're required to include inside your financial statements. Certain liabilities, okay, management discussion and analysis. It's been inside your financial statements for many years, so it's nothing new. We do look at that information, make sure it's all reported accurately, and we didn't have any issues as a result of doing our audit. Now, we also issue a report in accordance with government auditing standards. as a result of the internal control testing that we do over your grants and your contracts in compliance with rules, regulations, and mass general laws and stuff like that. And for the 2020 year, we did have to report a finding. It dealt around procurement not being done properly in accordance with mass general law. And the procurement, it's been an issue with the town for the last couple of years, and we've issued it as a management letter comment, but 2020 year, there was, the procurement wasn't done the way that it should have been done. So it ended up getting elevated to a finding. And luckily, you know, we were able to work with Michael Canales, who's got a tremendous knowledge of procurement. So I think he's a very good asset to the town to make sure that you have a right response going as a result of the findings. So I'll get into that finding as I get later on into the report. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here because I think we've got a lot of stuff to push through. I minimize this just so you can kind of see here. This is the management discussion and analysis. This is just procedure financial statements. Everything that's inside the financial statements, I'm going to cover. So we don't need to kind of go over the background of this stuff. Okay. I'm just going to skip past the MD&A and get right to your balance sheet here. All right. It's a statement in that position. The cash held in your special revenue fund and your general fund, $11.4 million. We had no issues in auditing your cash. Everything was confirmed. All the bank accounts are reconciled. We noticed nothing running through your cash that didn't relate to operating the town, so everything was okay there. We didn't notice anything wrong with your receivables. That's receivables at the end of the year, real estate, personal property, motor vehicle, excise tax receivables. Same stuff has always been in the prior year. Real estate tax receivables were slightly higher than the previous year. We know that we're coming through a pandemic period. But in regards to the commitments that you guys did for your real estate tax, you collected 95% of the number. Motor vehicle excise tax and personal property tax collecting high 90%. So the town has always done a very good job in collecting its taxes. Yep, a question? Okay.
Go ahead, David.
Okay, capital assets. The town did have quite a bit of activity in the fixed assets this year here. We had big projects going for the garage. We traced out to all the invoices, make sure everything was reported properly, and we had no issues. We had bridge work, we had a town hall drainage project, and we bought a bunch of equipment and vehicles. So we spent close to $2.4 million in capital assets this year here, long-term construction projects too, with bridges and the garage project. Everything was recorded right in the general ledger, so no issues there. Okay, and these deferred inflows and outflows, this is an accounting estimate and it's connected with the net pension liability and the other post-employment benefit liability. GASB, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board said that you guys belong to the Berkshire County Retirement System. The Berkshire County Retirement System is in a deficit position. We have to represent our proportionate share of that pension system on our balance sheet. Our proportionate share is about 3.5% of the total system. That estimated liability is a little over $1 million. There's certain aspects of that liability that we defer and report in future accounting periods, which is what this deferred inflow and outflows is connected to. We've been doing this for about 5 or 6 years now, so nothing's new. And it's all based on actuary calculations and an actuary report that we get from the Public Employee Retirement Administration Commission. So everything was fine there. Then the other big one that we have is the other post-employment benefit liability. You know, the town promises to pay for health insurance of its retirees, but we got to estimate what that promised obligation is to our retirees and our future retirees. So we have an actuary come in, they do all their calculations and they come up with this liability, and it ends up being about $3.4 million. Now, what you don't see here is the fact that the town's got about $2.9 million in assets put into a trust, okay? So, but this just represents the gross liability. We have a fiduciary fund that reports the value of the trusts to back this liability. And as of June 30, 20, the value in that trust was 2.9 million. So that's about 87% funded of that promised obligation at June 30, 2020. So the town, in my opinion, has done a fantastic job in funding that liability, which is a true liability, and, maintaining an aggressive contribution schedule. So very good for the town.
It's Jay, it's fair to say that most towns and municipalities do not fund for OPEB.
Yeah, yep, that is correct. From the other towns that I audit, you guys are the most aggressive in actually taking the liability very serious. So that's very good to see. Now, just as a side comment, no, I guess I'll keep moving forward here. I'm sorry. So anyways, so if you take your total assets, right, and you subtract off your total assets of 45.5 million, subtract off your total liabilities, including these OPEB obligations and net pension liability obligations, that gets you to a cumulative net position of 28 million. And then we break that down into its components. What we have tied up in fixed assets, that's net of the debt to put those assets there. What we have restricted, that we have to spend it on very specific things because we got federal, state grants and contracts that said you got to, spend the money on certain things, or we got contributions or trust funds saying you can only spend it on certain stuff. And then everything else is unrestricted, and we're a positive 1.7 million. Now, this okay, so I think what I'm going to do here to kind of speed this up, I'll just kind of give you the summary.
Right.
The numbers are fine. We didn't have any issues. All the accounting work that Ray did in the general ledger, we had no issues. The Schedule A, everything made it into the financial statements perfectly okay. We have no issues as a result of looking at all the revenues of the assets of the liabilities of the town. So I think what I would like to do is just kind of speed forward a little bit. And I want to get down to the finding because it's an important issue. We did end up having a finding in regards to the town's procurement. So the town had a lot of capital projects going on and a lot of purchases that went on. And the bidding seemed to all be done fine, with all the sealed bids and getting the projects up off the ground. But the publications for some of it only made it into a local publication, whereas it should have made it into the Combis system or the central register system, and it didn't. And it didn't make it in for anything in 2020. And when we looked back, everything, in 2019 and earlier, everything was properly all posted. And then 2020, it just came to a screeching halt for whatever reason. So as a result of it, Michael Canales, contacted our office immediately and also went ahead and contacted the state, to figure out how to handle the thing, which was the right move, in our opinion, to be very proactive about it. So we issued a finding. We felt as though that the internal controls should be strengthened. Additional education needs to be learned from some of the departments that actually procure assets. And then to have that procurement manual and a checklist to make sure that this doesn't happen again put in place. So that's kind of what our recommendation was. And we spent a lot of time chatting about it with Ray and with Michael Canales. And they have the response here, and we were fine with the response. So I'm pretty confident that we're going to find a different story when we come in and we audit the fiscal year 2021. So that was really the big issue. Everything else in that, the audit went good. I mean, working with your staff has always been fantastic, and getting the numbers in has always been fine. But we did have a couple management letter comments. Just kind of recommended strengthen some internal controls around some of your town credit cards. And we talked about that with Ray and Michael Canales, and they agreed with that. And we had a couple recommendations, and they had their recommendation or their action taken in there, that they are going to properly track and initial who's using it and which car is being fueled up. And there might even be looking at a different system going forward, which would track all this stuff electronically. That would be the best. And then the other management letter comment that we had, the town has got these large capital projects, And on these capital projects, you have, an architect that's got to sign off on it and program managers that have got to sign off on it. And then when we looked at the AIA documents, the architect certificate for payment forms, we didn't notice that the architect signed off on any of them. And I guess it was a decision made by the town to not actually use the services of the architect, but to rely on the town's own expertise. And while there's no issues with that, we felt as though it would have been helpful if the decision had been documented, that was the risk that the town was going to take. And we didn't see that decision was documented anyplace. And it's a significant decision, I think, because, if construction work isn't done right and it's on a big project, it can be very costly to the town to fix things. So if you're not going to use a licensed architect who drew up the plans to certify the work and the town's going to take responsibility for that, then that decision, I think, should have been documented. So that was pretty much it for the audit, Jay. I don't know if anybody has any questions in regards to the audit itself or the financial statements or anything that, I might be able to help answer, shed some light on.
Do we have anybody with questions, please?
I have a quick question. Was the lack of architect sign off a long-term problem that the town faced, or was that also sort of in a very compressed time frame, similar to the procurement issue?
We only saw it on one project, and that project was connected with the expenses that were paid in fiscal 20. I did not go back into prior years or anything like that. We didn't notice it in prior years if that was or was not the case. So it was just on one project that we saw.
In prior years, we were using combis to procure over 10,000.
I'm sorry, what's the question?
In prior years, we were using combis.
Oh, yes, absolutely. In prior years, the previous town manager, Danielle was her name. You go back into the prior year, and everything was logged into combis for every single project that we selected for testing as the audit. Just in 2020, it was like a clean cutoff. Just nothing made it up there that it should have. So indicating that the person responsible for the procurement didn't have a full knowledge of what they actually needed to do. And yet it happened during a transition period for the town.
Do we, just one small question, do we in fact use licensed architects on all of our projects, or are we using engineers in many cases?
I don't know the answer to that question. Maybe Michael might be able to answer that.
Yes. Can you guys hear me on this one?
Yes.
All right, good. I switched to my phone for audio because I was having trouble too. It appears that in 20, most of the sign-offs and work done was being done in-house by in-house staff instead of either engineers or architects. So other than them doing the project manuals and the project diagrams, they were not overseeing the actual work. And this is something that's already been corrected moving forward. We are using our architects and our engineers and with scheduled project meetings and the rest to keep these projects on task.
The only reason I asked the question, Michael, is because in the draft management letter, Allison indicates that the town will be using the services, and I quote, of a licensed architect. And I'm just not sure that that's correct. And
it should actually be licensed architect or engineer, depending on the project.
No, thank you.
Okay.
I don't want the management letter to be inaccurate.
Okay. No, that's a very good point. So, and this is a draft, so I can make that change, Steve.
Yeah.
So on the management letter comment, where it says the town will be using the services of a licensed architect / engineer.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'll get that change made for the final.
I think that's a good point. Anything else?
Just a general comment, Jay. Having sat through these meetings for 10 years. I just want to say that Adelson and Company has done wonderful work for the town. And whatever minor questions I had prior to this meeting were completely addressed by Ray Ellsworth. And I appreciate the very quick responses that I was given. I think the procurement issue, of course, is one that has dogged us, if you will. I'm sorry to use that expression, for a couple of years. But it's clearly under the control now of a highly competent town administrator and town accountant. And I'm certainly confident that we're not going to see this criticism in a management letter again. So
I would like to add one point, if I might, Steve, that in the beginning of the audit, one of the points that David Irwin always makes is he makes the statement, have you received the full cooperation of the staff and all of the required information? And to your point, Steve, we have at this point an outstanding town administrator, town accountant, treasurer, and things have worked extremely well. And we're able to get information quickly and to the point to satisfy the needs of the auditor and the authorities.
mhm.
Anything else at this point? If not, David, is it appropriate to close this session?
Yeah, the only thing I need is just a vote so I can put my signature to the audit.
Okay, I think the first thing we would need, Michael, is a vote from the select board. You have 2 of the 3 members, okay? Do you, can we have a motion from a member of the select board? Patrick?
I think
Okay.
Patrick's muted.
Got
Patrick,
on mute,
did you-
Patrick.
Okay, and are you both in favor?
Jay, can we just see if there's any questions from the public before we vote?
The audio was not great. You are both in favor, Patrick and Roxanne McCaffrey, yes?
Questions from the public before we vote?
Patrick is saying that he'd like to give the public the opportunity to speak or ask
I
questions.
will, but I would like to take the vote first, okay?
Okay,
If I might, from the Finance Committee, can I have a motion, please?
quiet.
Well, I would make the motion, but I would add that the addition of the license,
Yeah.
I'm drawing a blank on it, but
Architect
that's
slash
the,
engineer.
The architect.
yeah,
and
the
engineer,
licensed engineer, let's make
Right.
sure that's in there.
Yep.
And I would second that motion. Just a quick roll call. Jim, you're in
Yes.
favor? Pam Boudreau,
Yes.
Diane? Kraus, Steve Schatz,
Yes.
and myself.
Mm.
Okay, from the public's perspective at this point, do we have any questions before we adjourn the meeting?
Did you record the select board?
Yes. Yes, 2-0. Yes. Are there any questions? Are there any questions from the public? There being none, I would,
I'll move that we adjourn, Jay.
how about a second, Steve?
Second,
And any discussion? Any other business? All in favor?
Roll call.
Okay, we'll take a roll call. Patrick White, Roxanne,
Aye.
Jim,
yes.
myself, yes. Pam Boudreau,
Aye.
Diane Rouse,
Yes.
okay, Steve Schatz,
Yes.
okay, I believe I have everybody. So the motion has been made, seconded, and unanimously approved by all present. We will adjourn the meeting at 6:59 PM. Thank you, David, and thank you, everybody, for participating.
It was good to see everybody.
Thank
Yeah,
you
thank
very much,
David.
and
Thank you.
thank all your staff on our behalf.
I definitely will. Thank you, Jay.
Thanks so
And our
much.
staff.